ॐ वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य मआणीस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Om. May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. O self-effulgent Lord, be revealed in my consciousness. May the truths of the scriptures shine forth in my life. May not what I learn from them ever forsake me. Let me live my life according to their teachings, day and night. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Let us feel our innate divine existence, divine self in our heart as a steadily burning candle flame there. Let us concentrate on the flame. And let us feel the light from that flame is spreading everywhere in my being. I am made of this light. the bones, the blood, all organs, the skin. I see is made of light. I am light. So the whole universe is the same one light. All distinctions are dissolved. There is no space, no time, no birth or death. All is one without seconds, blissful, conscious being. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So, dear friends, let us begin today's discussion on this biography, bringing out the spiritual significance coming out from the life of Sri Ramakrishna, with our usual opening chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham shravanamangalam Srimadattatam bhuvi grinanti te bhurida jana. We were studying this on page 587, that how so many different groups of spiritual aspirants going by various different paths would come to Sri Ramakrishna, and there was a connection. When would they come? And Swami Saradananda mentions here that when Sri Ramakrishna would complete the sadhana or spiritual journey by one path and reach its ultimate goal, then the aspirants of that path would come to Dakshineshwar. Not that some invitation was being sent externally, that hey, here you all come, here is somebody who has reached the ultimate goal of your path, so you can get illumined by that. No, nothing like that, but it was a divine arrangement, as it were. And it is akin to, as is the demand, so is the supply. Demand-supply relationship. So, like whenever it is the winter is coming, the shops will have all the woolen clothings, warm clothings available there. When it is the month of July here, then those items will not be seen in the shop. In fact, you may not even, if you ask, you don't get them, because there is no room now. The demand for the other light clothings, good for summer, that is being displayed there. So whatever is needed is being supplied. It is like that. If this law, you see, is everywhere, even in the spiritual realm, you see this, that something is desired by these devotees and is available. So now that for that purpose, those aspirants, devotees, mendicants will come to Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar without any knowledge, no explicit conscious awareness that there is such a person here. But still they would get pulled there, and their inner that desire for illumination would get fulfilled. So, of course, these things are happening at a mystic level. We do not have the way to prove those things by external means. Our means are very limited. And that is why when we try to use those means for a realm that is not in the covered by the scope of those means, then we come to very wrong conclusions. So, therefore, this is to be remembered while studying this life of Sri Ramakrishna, that we try to understand things through our external reasoning, which is good, but we should also be aware that there are many, many things which are not accessible to our intellect, to our sense organs, to our mind, and there we cannot really apply that. It is, in Sanskrit there is a word for that, alaukik. Laukik means that which can be perceived by our sense organs and can be reasoned by our mind and so forth. It is, you can think of that it is this is the situation, and therefore this snow could come on such and such time. You get the weather forecast and all that. And by studying those external happenings through our sense organs and mind, to which many other instruments are attached these days. This is just a kind of guesswork based on certain experiences. In one novel, Pearl Bucks That Good Earth, it is described that there was one old lady and she had rheumatic pain. Her knee would give a lot of pain, and the pain would increase according to weather. Those who have these pains, they are aware of that they increase when there is lot of humidity and so forth. So she would be able to tell that when will the rains fall, today is it going to rain or not, based on the intensity of the pain in the knee. In fact, people used to, as far that novel describes, that just as we these days put on the weather channel or something to know how is the weather going to be. So people would ask her, hey, is it going to be raining today? And based on the pain in her knee, she would say, yeah, it will or it will not. So this is how, in general, physical science is of this type. Much more sophisticated, but the principle, friends, remain the same. So it is, but there are certain things that it cannot reach, and therefore that cannot be understood by this. For example, you cannot understand that after a person dies, where the spirit goes. It is not understandable by the physical science. The phenomena like samadhi is not accessible to the physical science, even though you apply hundreds of instruments. It is these days these experiments are conducted. There was a famous experiment on Buddhist monks at MIT, that when they were meditating, all the electrodes and everything was applied on their brains, and then the movements of these neurons, or whatever you may call, the neural movements were recorded and some conclusions were drawn. But the monks said, well, how would you can measure the neural movements, but that will not be able to give you the idea of the awareness which is getting reflected in them. Moreover, it is not a one-to-one correspondence either. And therefore, these things are not accessible to physical science. What is indicated here is that and this is the second paragraph on page 587, that there is clearly a hidden significance in the fact that aspirants of different sects enjoyed the Master's divine company at different times. This has always happened with the auspicious advent in the past, and so will happen in the future. According to a hidden law of spiritual world, avatars are born to avert the degradation of religion as a whole, or to revive a dying religion. But when we study their lives, we find differences in the manifestation of powers within them. This clearly indicates that some of them came to meet the needs of a particular country or a few religious communities, whereas others came to revived spirituality throughout the whole world. But while they promulgated their own revelations and beliefs, at the same time they fully supported the spiritual truths that were discovered and preached by the sages, seers, and avatars who preceded them. So it is because they could see that all this is connected, different expressions. It is not a new discovery, so to say. In world, people are after making new discoveries so that their name will get publicized more. So they will get Nobel Prize or whatever prize because they have discovered something new, something very important, hitherto unknown. But the avatars, they are aware that all these truths have been there previously also discovered and preached. Only a new application is to be given, that's all. There is no new in spiritual truth because they are eternal. In eternal, there is nothing new as such, neither new nor old. That is how this knowledge of the self or spiritual knowledge is described, that it is ever new. So it is, and ever new means not that it was not old. It was the oldest as well as the newest knowledge. So, Pura eva nava iti, as Shankaracharya comments on a verse in Kathopanishad, indicating that it is the self is the oldest and also the new. So it is pura api nava eva iti. It is old but new as well. So, and the incarnations of God, they are aware that these truths have been discovered, long time ago. They were eternal truths. They were not discovered by a person as such. And they have been there, only the incarnation brings out the applications of that truth in changed environments. So, for example, electricity is being used now for about how many? Maybe 200 years? What, Abhijit? Electricity? Yeah. So, that is about 150 years. Before that, there might be some experiments. But yeah. So about 150 years there has been the use of electricity. But see, as the situation changes, as the knowledge base develops, as the life of the people changes to a different level, the new uses of electricity get discovered. That is the discovery, new applications. Like on your phone, and you get new apps. Means not that the phone technology changes much, but you get new apps. So the new apps of electricity came, like you have the electric cars. You can now 150 years ago, you could not have thought of using an electric vacuum cleaner. Now you have the electric vacuum cleaner made. You could not have thought of that a computer run on electricity. So all these applications become manifest as the need of the particular age. So incarnations, they just connect all that knowledge to the new current need of the society. So they therefore don't negate what the earlier incarnations had done. So this is also, so it is said the history of spiritual realm and the connections between faiths always remain hidden to us because our minds are obscured by worldliness. This is a very important statement. Our minds being obscured by worldliness, we do not see those connections. And therefore we think that this is very new. It is in fact in research articles it is necessary to show some uniqueness, that at one place I was speaking, and that it is about Sri Ramakrishna's life, that he has restated in the new language all the ancient truths and has shown how to apply in these times. And then another speaker, that speaker was presiding over that meeting. He was not just much satisfied with what I was telling, and said that this speaker did not bring out the uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna. Unless a uniqueness is brought out in that message, he brought out uniqueness only in the applications. But actually Sri Ramakrishna has discovered this truth, that all different religions lead to the same goal. This was not hitherto told. Well, that is not the case actually. But why we are looking for something to bring out newness is otherwise, well, it had been told earlier also. What is much about, what is to revere Sri Ramakrishna about it? Earlier incarnations had also done the same thing. Well, they had done the same thing in that context, but in the present context, and with the emphasis on the problem of the present age, Sri Ramakrishna has re-demonstrated, re-illustrated it, as many great these students of life of Sri Ramakrishna mentioned, that this is therefore all the incarnations are great, but as the times change, new editions are to be brought out. New editions of the old volume had to be brought out. When I was in college, there used to be a book used by the medical students of anatomy. I don't know if that book is still in practice. I think it is. It is that Gray's Anatomy. Now, this anatomy book was a classic and then was used by students, but every now and then a new revised edition would be brought out. So the revision means certain new discoveries have been put into it. It is certain new ways of looking at the anatomy have been mentioned, but it is same more or less. It is in fact one student asked the professor, it is that the edition that I am getting, it used to be a very pricey book, and the student was not a very moneyed person. So he said, in the library I found an edition that is 10 years old. Will it be okay if I use it? He smiled and said, in last 10 years, no new bones have been added to human body, so you can use it without any problem. No new bones have been added. So, exactly like that, that Sri Ramakrishna is the new, revised and enlarged edition of the previous incarnations. That's all. So, this is, therefore, he mentions here that it is the connections, that how a particular incarnation preaches religion in this way, and how the influence is spread in certain regions and not other regions, and so forth. All these internal connections are not available to the regular human mind. This is something that we must remember, that these connections are underneath our level of awareness. So we cannot see that. There are some people who think that with the advancement of science, we will be able to know those things. And no, because it is the matter of principle, that the science, howsoever advanced it becomes, it dwells on the plane of sensual experience, the experience provided by the five senses. And therefore, whatever is not accessible to the five senses is not accessible to physical science, even if you used hundreds of different instruments. So, that is why it is mentioned that the avatars, the incarnations of God, actually it is the same one being coming in different cloaks and different appearance. It is the body which is like a clothing. That alone is different in case of, say, Buddha and Sri Ramakrishna, Jesus and Shankaracharya. They are the same one being in different clothes. Think of that. Like, say, our Prithvi, she is in one clothes right now, but that doesn't mean that he becomes different when he puts on different clothings. It is the same person. It is when you are doing your yard work, or if you are right now doing this snow shoveling, you do not put on your evening party dress, that is different for different purpose. But you are remain the same person as such in different clothings. So, as per the need, the clothing is put on. So also the incarnation, the God, assumes human form exactly according to the need. And that need is accessible at a deeper level only to that incarnation, and thus takes the body accordingly. So that is why it is not understandable. And also, you see, therefore, one important thing: no incarnation has negated or refuted the teachings of the earlier incarnations. This is something to note, like you see that, for example, that Lord Krishna preached the religion, purified certain aspects, and re-established what was told earlier also. Sri Ramakrishna did not destroy anything. Jesus specifically mentions that I have come to fulfill and not to destroy. So, this is because it is the same being. It is, suppose I took $100 from Naomi today, and then now she has put on some garment. Then tomorrow, if she, suppose I go to return, and if I see that, well, she has a red dress, shall I not give it to her? Or will she not take? No, that's not the case, because she knows that it is, in spite of the change in the garment, it's the same person. She will not negate what she did when the attire was different. So, this is something that one has to see, that an important thing, that those who do not know it, they try to show how they are different, how one incarnation is radically different from another incarnation, and how one has negated the other. That is not the case actually. So he again comes back to what Sri Ramakrishna said about this, that how the different aspirants were coming. It is, his one statement is quoted here: when flowers bloom, bees come of their own accord. This is also a spiritual law, as Master told us repeatedly. According to this law, the great avataras attain perfection and experience the truths of the spiritual world. Seekers of spirituality become attracted to them in order to know and learn the truth. This is evident everywhere. Aspirants of all religious denominations came to the Master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, not only those belonging to a single sect, because he had practiced the disciplines of all those paths and had realized God accordingly, and he could give specific instructions about each path. So, this is the age of the, omni stores, that all in one store you go, it's a superstore, and everything you get in the same store. You can buy the pharmaceuticals as well as grocery, as well as a computer, as well as some hardware tools. All those things you can buy in a single shop, in a single storefront. You can go, you can buy all that. Look at Amazon.com. It is a platform where you can buy all sorts of diverse things at one storefront. So, it is Sri Ramakrishna was this kind of superstore where the aspirants of all different paths could get what they needed. This is the important thing, the needs of this age, because of the communication and all that, just as a couple of 100 years ago or even 100 years ago, there was no such superstore. It is even 50, 60 years ago, hardly there would be a store of that type. It is, and even if it is there, it would be like a mall thing. In one building, there would be 20, 25 different shops. But this one store where you can go and get everything, pay at the same cashier counter, that's it, So that was not the need of that time, and it was not possible either. So there was one hardware store. Then if you want to go to buy grocery, you will go to a grocery store. And again, if you want to buy clothing, you will have to go to some third store. It is like that. Even there would be different stores that clothings of this type, clothings of that type, there would be different stores. So, but now go to one store and buy everything that you want, and you don't even have to go, just on your computer you can order and it gets dropped at your doorstep. So, this is how the age, the needs and the availability of technology has made this difference. So, similarly there is the need, the technological availability of Sri Ramakrishna's age. So, he had practiced all different religions, different faiths, and has gone to the culmination of each of them by different paths. So, it is, therefore, was a unique person in that sense that he could guide the aspirants of every faith, because he had already practiced that faith and reached the goal. So that is the very special thing. Nowadays, it is, and then he comes to the discussion of samadhi, very important thing, that nowadays means in the 1910s when this book was getting written. And now also that same idea holds, because it is not that the science has not developed since then, but in spite of the development of science, the plane of science has remained the same. It is not a different plane. So the same means the plane of the sense inputs, sensory inputs. So that has remained the same. So let us see what is said here. Nowadays, in the 1910s, some people say that the master learned a means for attaining God realization from visiting monks, practiced severe austerities, and as a result became completely mad for a period of time. According to these people, his brain was deranged and he developed a permanent disease that caused him to lose consciousness when under the influence of any excessive emotion. This was true then. Even the modern psychologists, they assert it that this happens, that this is the pathological conditions happen sometimes because of some excessive emotional stress. A person loses consciousness. It is many times the brain works on a principle where there is the blackouts happen if certain things, blood supply doesn't get there. So this is a known phenomena in neuropathology and psychology, that people lose the consciousness. And Sri Ramakrishna was like that he had that disease. And some much later, of course, psychologists, psychoanalysts, and so forth, there are very different names are there, they have concluded that Sri Ramakrishna saw that if he gets into this kind of state, then people think that he is a spiritually illumined person. So he practiced it. And he would go into that state deliberately. It is so difficult, to argue with these people, very difficult, because they have their science to support it. And it's not that the science is wrong as such. Its application is wrong. It is being applied to a domain where it is not applicable at all. It is true that there are these diseases do happen. If you say like doing excessive this pranayama, and the brain gets deranged, then many such practices, austerities, about not having food or not the right food for a long time, then some abnormalities do get crystallized in a person, and then the person behaves like an insane, and again such attacks come. In between the attacks, the person seems to be normal, but you never know how the attack will come. There are like the epilepsy. The person otherwise is normal, but while just sitting in a place, suddenly loses consciousness. I have seen a few incidents of that. A man traveling in a bus, I was in that same bus, and I was also standing holding the bar, and he was also, and suddenly he fell down, not because of any jerk in the bus, just lost consciousness. So everybody became, that, oh, okay, shake him, put some water on his head. Various those people knew all those that home remedies for such thing. I saw one person was very sure that if that person smells a sandal, that person will come to normal consciousness. Actually, he took out his sandal and put to the nose of that person and said, look, now he is coming to that normal awareness. All those, I have not much expertise in that, but that certainly is a pathological condition, somebody going into this state, and somewhat worrisome. because although normal, at no external known cause, the person could faint, lose consciousness any time. So they thought, and there is no dearth of people even now to think that Sri Ramakrishna had this disease. So Swami Saradananda says, "Oh God, we are such a herd of learned fools." The rishis of India demonstrated in their own lives and explained through the Vedas, Puranas, Tantras, and other scriptures that normal consciousness disappears as soon as a person ascends to samadhi by means of full concentration of mind. And this is something that happens and that has been recorded. Now, naturally, you cannot understand it by your means of physical science. It is beyond its domain. I again would like to tell about what Swami Vivekananda says in his introduction to Raj Yoga, that these things appear to be a kind of miraculous things, but it is a science, it's not miracle. And every science is to be studied by its specific instruments. You cannot study the astronomy using a microscope. You need a telescope for that. And you cannot study microbiology using a telescope. So, if you are adamant that I want to study astronomy, but I will not use any other instrument but my microscope, it has helped me to see all the minute things and study the microbiology, and therefore it's a great instrument. So I will use my microscope to study astronomy also. The person is not likely to succeed much. So this sense apparatus, physical senses and the mind, this apparatus is useful only at certain levels in certain regions. Beyond that, it does not have an applicability. And therefore, we conclude, and that is where we make a big mistake, that because something is not seen by this sensory apparatus that we have, it does not exist. Had it existed, I would have seen it. It is, but we know that many things that we see don't exist, and many things which exist we don't see. For example, we see horizon, a line. Does it exist just because we see? It is an optical illusion. So also many such things are there. We don't see the worms in yogurt by our normal eyes. Does it mean that they don't exist? They exist, but you have to use different means to see that. So Swami Vivekananda says, this science of the spiritual realm, it is a science, has its own instruments, the instrument of concentration and meditation, going deeper into your awareness, and then that which was not visible or available earlier, you can see with that instrument in the same way, just as the non-existent those worms in yogurt will become visible when you apply microscope to your eye. So all the hidden divine realms in us will become visible to us when we do that, and then our awareness will change. We will lose this awareness, just as we lose this awareness of waking state when we go to dream. Then that dream awareness becomes real. This waking state awareness is not real to us at that time. Exactly like that, friends. So, it is those of us who are so tied to this sensory apparatus cannot think of something beyond and inaccessible to this apparatus. So they think that, well, let science progress for another 10 years and things will become so clear after that. And I have been hearing this for last 30 years. Just let 10 years pass and then it will be over. We will know everything. So it is not so. These great souls who were considered avatars and received the heartfelt respect of people in all countries experienced samadhi in their own lives and declared that losing consciousness in this manner was inevitable along the spiritual path. They unveiled this mystery to us again and again. If we spread the idea that this loss of consciousness is a disease and listen to others propound it, is there any hope for us? O reader, if you wish, you may respectfully listen to those worthless words. So he says, well, that is, you can keep listening to that, you can hold on to that and see what comes to your life. If you feel satisfied with that, that's it. But he says, leave us alone who know, who have seen that there is this realm of this sense organ, but that is not all. There is something beyond that too, and that is not only accessible, accessing that, getting that is the only way for the fulfillment of everything that we are seeking in life. Otherwise, our desires just keep on multiplying. That beautiful hymn by Swami Vivekananda about Sri Ramakrishna, that is, has a beautiful, that very revealing stanza. Tejas taranti tarasa tvai tripta trishna rage krite ritapathe tvai Ramakrishna. That all we are, like the craving is just burning us. I want this and this and this. There is no peace. But all this craving just gets its fulfillment when that is turned towards this Sri Ramakrishna, Rage Krite Ritapathe Tvai Ramakrishna. When then you become Tripta Trishna, means all your desires, they become fulfilled, all the craving goes away in life. So, this is what is promised by going beyond this sensory world. And in this sensory world, what is there? Mm. Well, all the frustrating experiences, you keep on running after different desires, and the object of one desire, when you get, you see three more objects of desire that you need to run after. So, this is the constant problem of humanity, which can be solved only by this path, holding on to this life of avatara, the incarnation of God. So, this topic actually is continuing for a little while more, and then he has given also the example of Shivanath Shastri, a preacher of that time in the Brahma Samaj, who also used to characterize Sri Ramakrishna's Samadhi and such thing as a sickness, a pathology. So we shall see how Sri Ramakrishna answers that next Tuesday. Huh? Yes, yes, Sri Ramakrishna answered that. The answer to that was given by Sri Ramakrishna to Shivanath Shastri, yes. Any questions?
No, Swamiji, there is no web question.
Very
yet.
good. You have a question as a?
When Sri Ramakrishna said that his experiences have surpassed the Vedas and the Vedanta, what does that mean?
Oh, very good question for the web listeners. Let me repeat the questions. Eze asked that when Sri Ramakrishna said that his experiences have surpassed the Vedas and Vedanta and all that, the scriptures, what does he mean? This could be understood that in two different ways. Firstly, that many things that he experienced were not mentioned in those scriptures. Because those scriptures mention principles, and every manifestation, everything would not be mentioned there. So Sri Ramakrishna experienced many different these layers of consciousness which were not given in the Vedas or Vedanta. You experience that. Second way of looking at it, that experience itself is so such a thing, so intense, that it can never be properly put into words. And so you can't get it in a book. So Sri Ramakrishna's life had it, and so again Sri Ramakrishna put it in words, some of that. But we don't get it, we feel perplexed. That for example, Sri Ramakrishna described the experience of seeing that Swami Vivekananda as one of the stars, a sage amongst the Saptarshi. So amongst the 7 sages, he saw, and then he described how his mind went from one plane to next plane and transcended all different planes, and then reached where there was nothing with form existed. And for us, for me, it is so contradictory. I cannot explain it, friends. That after, in the same breath, as it were, Sri Ramakrishna said, but even there, in that realm of formless, there were these 7 sages, sitting. So now this is the word expression of something that cannot be expressed in words. That is the only thing I can think about it. So,
I have a question here, myself. Yeah, I have a question.
oh, you have a question, okay.
In sensory experience, of course, mind is needed, attached to various sense organs.
Yeah.
In a supersensuous experience, mind is also needed up to a certain point just before the experience, and then it melts away. That's our understanding.
That is correct. That it is the experience of the different types of samadhi, especially the bhava samadhi, what is called bhava samadhi, a particular mood of the divine experience. There is the mind still intact, although not these sense organs. But in the what is called nirvikalpa samadhi, the mind also is dissolved. There is no mind there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So let us conclude with the closing prayers. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.